I just wonder what the point is when he's out of office in 2 months. What reasonably can be accomplished?
I think that's a valid question, Kailey. I think that he will try to ensure that several things that happened under his administration, namely military to military communications being reestablished. They had deteriorated badly under the first Trump administration. Chinese cooperation on fentanyl interdiction, that continues. But of course, once he's out of office, he really has very little control over U.S.-China relations. So I think we're right to ask, what is actually the purpose of this?
Well, and when we talk about those areas where we are still seeing cooperation with China or have seen progress being made in communication when it comes to the military and other things, do you expect the president-elect would like to see those efforts continue? It's not just trade we're considering here, but other aspects of the relationship.
Absolutely. I mean, I think he would like to see particularly the, assistance on fentanyl, but in his first administration, communication, military to military communication, agency to agency communication really deteriorated. So unless he's significantly changed his view on that, no, we don't see him putting that much effort into continuing these lines.
Well, OK, so let's talk about tariffs as well, because he certainly has talked a very big game in that regard. As Tyler mentioned, potentially 60% levies placed on all exports coming from China to the United States. Is that bluster to you, Mary, or do you think that might be real, not just a negotiating tactic?
You know, we don't take it as bluster, not after we've seen the trade war tariffs, which still are placed on about half of what we import from China. So no, we don't take it as bluster. On the other hand, I think that he is wading into a territory that is very fraught for American businesses. Few people realize that many of the things that we import from China, in fact, the majority, are inputs that our manufacturers use. Driving up those costs is really going to hurt American manufacturers, many of whom are not ready to get them from other alternative sources, particularly domestic sources. One of the people you interviewed said that the tariffs were going to be used to onshore critical defense industries. I'd really like to know what these industries are. We're already under the CHIPS Act trying to reshore semiconductors. And of course, in the defense sector, we have been preferencing domestic sourcing forever. So what exactly are they talking about? What we know is going to be hit and hasn't been hit is consumer electronics. Also, these are things that many businesses use, so laptops, desktops, et cetera, along with cell phones. And these are going to drive up costs for American consumers and American businesses.
Well, and obviously it could have consequences for Chinese businesses as well. And Mary, I wonder how you view the reaction function of China here. If higher tariffs go into place, are they actually likely to change their approach when it comes to capacity or overcapacity, as the U.S. is concerned about, and start actually pulling back on some of that? Are they actually likely to stimulate even further because there will be an economic hit here, and so they might throw even more money at some of these industries?
I mean, I think you're thinking along the right lines. Exports to the United States are a very small share of their manufacturing sector. So in some sense, they may not care. The things that they want from the United States, which would be removal of the semiconductor export controls or access to our EV market, are simply not on the table. So in one sense, they have simply concluded that the U.S. is done with China, and they may, in fact, they're just done with the U.S. So it's not clear how they will respond, what their reaction function is in this environment. If we look back at what Biden's policies were for Trump, in many cases, they were continuations or even extensions of Trump's policies. So he added taxes on new energy. He has placed a large number of companies under financial or economic sanctions. And he has, of course, had the export controls on advanced semiconductors, which have really, impinged on China's quest for upgrading its technology. So the answer may be there really is nothing that the Chinese want. Right now, their economy is, as you said, in a rough patch, to put it nicely. And they may decide that putting tariffs of their own is just, going to shoot themselves in the foot.
Well, but I do wonder what other markets China would look toward in the scenario that trade was severely reduced, if not outright completely decoupled from the United States. Are there other areas where these goods will reasonably go, and therefore, the capacity is still being put out there in the global market? And what does the U.S. do then?
Oh, yes. I mean, their share of global manufactured goods hasn't changed since 2016. So, yes, it is going to other places. And we've charted this out. So first, China itself has really diversified both where it gets its imports and where it sells its exports. So it's made itself less vulnerable to the United States. Its exports, as you say, they have to go somewhere. Where are they going? They're going to middle income countries, mostly. Other countries, Indonesia, Vietnam, India, South America, parts of Africa, so low income countries. So they've been, in a sense, shifting for quite some time, but particularly since the U.S.-China trade war.
Well, and I do wonder as well about China's relationship, trade or strategic or otherwise, that I would imagine could come up in the meeting with Biden and Xi tomorrow, say the relationship with Russia, the relationship with Iran, that they're still buying a lot of oil from. How do those other adversaries work into this equation?
Well, the U.S. has financial sanctions on doing business with Russia that China's so far has been very careful about avoiding being caught in this net. Nevertheless, the U.S. has warned them about selling to Russia things that promote the war effort. But this is a very porous thing. They're selling tons of vehicles, tons of consumer electronics, electronic devices, which may find their way into drones and other things. So, it's a really hard line to draw, and China's probably right up against it. And I'm sure President Biden is talking about this. The war in Ukraine is of, key concern to him, as it is to our European allies. So I'm sure it's on the table. But China has pretty much charted its path, which is that it is deepening Russia's dependence on it. And that, I think, is what we're going to see continuing.